All right, hey everyone, welcome to another session of Voices in Marketing, brought to you by Pattern Creators. As you all know, logging into Zoom takes a little bit of time, sometimes the audio clicking in and all that. So we'll just give people a couple minutes, and then I'll do some introductions today. And then I'm going to hand it over to the panelists and jump off camera and let everybody just have a good time learning from this really, really good crew that we've got today. So we'll just give it 30 seconds here, and then we'll dive right in. And as we go, I'll be monitoring chat. There's also a Q&A. Feel free to use either one of those. If you want to drop questions in, the panelists will be able to see those as well. And it'll be good to have engagement as we go. So, okay. Well, awesome. So welcome to this session of Voices in Marketing. I'm thrilled with the panelists we've got lined up this time and our moderator. I'm Trenton Romph, the Director of Marketing at Pattern Creators. If you don't know what that is, Pattern Creators is a division of the e-commerce accelerator called Pattern, and we're your one-stop shop for everything influencer marketing. We have an influencer marketing platform called Current, and we also offer influencer marketing services and a fully managed TikTok shop solution. So if you want to learn more about that, interested there, you can check us out at current.tech. But enough about us. The whole point of Voices in Marketing is to bring together incredible e-commerce leaders, marketers, operators, co-founders, founders, etc., learn from each other and figure out how we build better brands. And so I can confidently say today we've done exactly that with the panelists we have here. I've talked with all of them and I've maybe researched them a little too much. I can confidently say we're going to learn a ton from this group. So let me introduce you to our speakers. So first, we've got Jenna Kerner, Forbes 30 Under 30, co-founder of Harper Wilde. Nick Politi, the force-driving influencer awesomeness at Kettle Fire. Aaron Connolly, a phenom marketer, taking the sexiest air purifier I've ever seen and making it blow up on social. Nico, a growth machine, selling more bone broth than maybe he deserves over at Kettle Fire. Natalie Holloway, a Bala, and might I add, a baller, co-founder, Shark Tank legend, and skilled operator, elevating exercise equipment into an art form. And moderating today's panel, last but not least, is BJ Jacobs, an obsessed and brilliant growth executive coming from brands like Goop, Harper Wilde, and David Yurman. And with that, I will bounce off so you don't have my nodding head anymore and hand it over to BJ and our panelists. Over to you, BJ.
Thank you, Trent. Excited to be here. This is an awesome panel of folks that have built often cited influencer programs and growth marketing machines. So it is quite a mix of categories and verticals, but all really exciting stories that I'm really keen to dive in on. The kind of way that I'd love to start this is first talking about that initial leap. All of the brands that are represented here have entered categories where brand was done incredibly differently than the way they do it now. Either, a 180 to existing brands or simply applying brand principles to categories and products that haven't existed before. And when we think about bringing influencer programs to life, creator programs, any sort of UGC, we're kind of giving that brand that we've put every bit of TLC into and considered thoughtfully into someone else's hands. I'd love to kind of pose the question to this group. What does that feel like? What does that look like? How did you get over that first hurdle?
I'm happy to start.
Please do, Jenna.
Sure. So as you mentioned, Jenna from Harper Wilde, and we're an intimates company. We exist to create a more comfortable world for womankind, starting with the world's most comfortable bras and underwear. And the reason I give that context is, was and is one large player in intimates that has taken a really different approach when it comes to using creators and angels, I might say, to represent their brand. And so when we, saw an opportunity for a brand that represented the modern women and represented all women, not just people who, looked like they could be a pinup, it was a pretty easy choice for us to really want to work with so many different people to represent our brand, because that's who we felt like we were building for. That's who we felt like had been left out of decades of representation in this industry. So, I think for us, it was a really easy decision to want to showcase our product and what we were building on so many different types of people, and really start to showcase that this industry and the marketing around it could look really different. So I think for us it was a bit a no-brainer, and it's evolved over time, but it really had to do with kind of the industry that we were stepping into and what had been done previously.
How about our friends at Molekule? Aaron, in opposition to this brand that everyone can feel a part of, you guys are a highly technical product with really kind of specific specs and complex science to talk about. Not to say that there's not a lot of R&D in these other categories, but I don't think they can hold a candle to the R&D that it takes to create cleaner air. How do you guys stop handing that off?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think you raise a good point about the fact that there is a ton of R&D that goes into our product so that we can speak really clearly about the science behind the way that we're purifying air. But I also think on the other side of that, the beauty of it is everybody breathes air. So we are really specific with our science, with the whole PICO technology, the HEPA, the tri-power that we have going on. But I think what's been really fun and good for us as a brand is that, okay, yeah, it's really specific, but it's also really common. That's created a no-brainer kind of, Jen, I'm going to steal your term there for us when it comes to working with influencers. Also because how do you get people to think about the air that they breathe? There needs to be a story surrounding it. So yeah, we can talk about the science from the molecule side of things, the brand side of things, but to get people to tell their story about how air is important is really what lands for us as a company. So hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely. To turn it over to Nick and Nicolo, teeing it up a little bit, I think, bone broth was once sitting in a refrigerated section of a health food store, certainly not common vernacular. And you guys have, like the other brands in this call, really built an egalitarian brand. How did you enter the space while teaching new language to people who might not have ever understood what bone broth is?
Yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a journey. And I think when we first started, we were the first like shelf stable bone broth, and everyone knows what general cooking broth is, but sipping, bone broth as a health routine was relatively new. And so we started really small with that, like of 1,000, if you will, and looked at like, all right, who's going to be the hard folks? And so we looked at like the paleo community, and that kind of built out to the keto community. And then we kind of took the learnings that we kept seeing from there and like thought through what are challenges and things that everyday people can relate to here, right? Like weight loss is one. Gut health is something that is pretty ubiquitous in terms of people trying to improve their gut biome. And so we definitely tested and learned a lot of these different concepts, and then kind of like built them out. And what we saw was that people kind of took the nudge and then ran with it a little bit. And so our core value is creating products that heal rather than harm. And you can't control who posts about you. We definitely had some like, I don't know, sometimes controversial folks who are like, yeah, we're not going to lead into them as a brand. And we've had some internal conversations of like, hey, is this someone that, you're not going to tell them not to be a customer or whatever. Like, how do we deal with this maybe controversial figure, like talking about our brand? And we go back to the same value of like, we're just trying to create products that heal rather than harm. And we think that, everyone deserves to be healed. And so our goal is to make a product that everyone can enjoy and consume and talk about. So that's kind of how we looked at it. But it definitely, we're specific on who we choose to deliberately work with. But as you grow as a brand, obviously, the hope is you want to see people from all walks of life and across the whole spectrum using and enjoying your product. So we've been lucky and that people have really taken to it.
It makes total sense. You teed up kind of the next thought that I would love to ask Natalie to weigh in on, which is, hey, we've developed this product with a huge serviceable market. You know, you touched in bone broth that it's both paleo and wellness, but also, you know, any myriad of use cases. Bala has the whole population at their disposal. When you build an influencer program, how do you balance that kind of breadth of possibilities with saturation and depth? So kind of taking the way we have traditionally bought media, thinking about reach versus frequency, but like applying that to this really kind of brand that is super approachable and anyone can touch.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And we let's see, so Ball has been around 6 years, and our strategy has definitely evolved over time. Like at the beginning, it was really just, you know, we created an influencer program because we were bootstrapping and we wanted to gift the product. And what would happen is, you know, 6 years ago, people were really starting to like film their workouts. Like that kind of movement was just starting, maybe even like 4 or 5, it might have been during COVID that grew. And so it was kind of the perfect timing for us because we were just sending out influencer packages, but people then started to film their workouts. So it really worked out for Bala because, you know, if somebody was putting Bala in their videos, it's kind of like an up-leveled brand experience of the fitness equipment they're using. And then so everyone would see it and then they would do the same thing. So it kind of was like a show and tell. But now I would say our strategy is we go deep with our creators. So we have about 600 ambassadors on our platform. And, you know, there's a range from really large influencers to micro. But what I will say is like the people that we're consistently tapping for, you know, certain paid gigs or bigger events or, you know, launches, things like that. Those are like our Bala babes that we have been with for many years. So it's like, I would say we go really deep in our partnerships because I think you can just see the organic reach that has in general. I mean, you just see the authenticity there versus us just tapping like a creator because they're big and doing a one-off. So I would say like our top creators that we use, regardless of size, are people that we've had a really strong relationship for many years. And, you know, it's like very mutually beneficial. Like they're posting about us, but we're also like, if we have a client like Weston or Goop that has a large paid opportunity, we tap this network. So it's very a mutual relationship. So I think that authenticity really plays well when we like go deep with our partnerships.
And
Yeah, I just want to build on.
Yeah. Go for it.
I was going to build on something Natalie said in terms of, you know, folks wanting to include Bala in this like mutual beneficial. Like a few years ago when we were launching our sports bra, we included a bunch of Bala products in one of our shoots. And so I think we experienced that, you know, firsthand, and it's the brands really work well together. And so I think that can happen for creators as well. For sure. Nick, over to you.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, something Natalie touched on was kind of, when you go deep, you get kind of this 1 + 1 = 3 situation. It's kind of almost intangible where, you know, influencers, they used to be truly influencers and now they've kind of, everyone's an influencer, right? And so there's so many brand deals out there. And I think, you know, a conversation I try to have with folks is like, we're trying to find long-term partners. You know, one, it's good for us because there is like a frequency play it here. Like, so the same audience has to see the product multiple times for it to really stick. But then it's also for the influencer, like you don't want to be showing a new product or new brand every single time, right? You want to show some consistency and show that like I truly love this product, and that's where the influence comes in. And so yeah, I think we've kind of done a similar strategy to Natalie, where we really try to like lean into the folks that we work with, try to structure deals that like lend themselves for long-term partnerships, right? Like we might not be able to get full flat fee price every single month, but we can find kind of a more nuanced partnership structure that allows us to be kind of omnipresent in their content. And I think, you know, bone broth, which is often used as like a cooking liquid for recipe content, can be used in 50 to 70% of all recipes. And so it's trying to strike a chord there. how we get that long-term partnership established.
Mhm.
That makes tons of sense. This is something that I'm just fascinated by personally. So I'm going to ask you while I have you all here, as you've gone out to these communities, what have you learned about your own brand and its use cases that kind of surprised you? You went out and you said, hey, take on this product that we've developed with, a million use cases in mind, but we probably didn't think of 1,000,001. Has anyone been surprised by how creators have kind of changed the trajectory of their brand?
I have a specific example that did come up, and the gut health realm, like we were pretty female focused as a brand, just like we're a grocery item, and a lot of grocery shopping happens from the woman in the household, and so a lot of our positioning stuff is towards men, towards females, and then we ignored the male demographic quite a bit, and we had kind of back to like a somewhat controversial figure post about a male post about how beneficial it was for fasting, and like the boom in sales and brand awareness and Google Trend search volume. I think it was just like really crazy. It really shocked, I think, me and the whole company, just like how underserved that this male demographic was. And so that was one that like now we've kind of pivoted our budget and our strategy to try to incorporate some more of this male audience. So that was definitely learning for us.
And when you guys find that, a new audience is kind of unlocked, I feel like it's the time to kind of double down and test new creatives and new creators as well. So we've seen this like on Amazon as well. When this happened, like sales across the board skyrocketed. So even if we kind of use, always in the past, kind of try to attribute direct sales to influencers, after that time, we kind of understood how like awareness is important for a brand, because there was not directly attributable sales with that specific post, but across retail and online, we've seen sales spiking without coupon, without anything that you can trace to that person. So that really allow kind of a company to pivot their initial budget and initial ideas into something new and tap into a new audience.
Makes total sense. And have you been able to lean into that and kind of expand into not just male, but niche males when you started, hey, this is like the direction that will guide some of our male strategy? Or, have you been able to kind of use those cues of people who were naturally picking up and response to programs that Nicola just mentioned, to help guide some of that expanding strategy?
Yeah, I think the principles are the same right around the influencer stuff. So now we're just like taking what we've learned from our traditional prospecting and outreach and negotiation tactics and just now like focusing on a new demographic. And so, yeah, I mean, it's definitely been resonating. And again, I think like for me, it was great because I'm making this like brand awareness push, especially because we're such a retail focused brand now. We're like 90% grocery. And so and we're essentially water. So we're not a very efficient thing to buy online, and shipping water is really expensive. And so, I just think like from the influencer standpoint, the best, the oldest like marketing tactic in the book is like referral, right? A friend tells you about something. And that's kind of what we were able to, all these brands were able to kind of piggyback off that on the influencer marketing side. And so I still think like, influencer is just friend referrals at scale. And so try to tell this like brand awareness story of like, hey, I call them endorsed impressions. It's someone saying how much they love your product. And the people who are seeing that content have like subscribed to this influencer's content, right? So you like have an engaged audience who has some intent, who's listening to this influencer. For me, like trying to get more budget on the influencer side to go towards these brand awareness style campaigns has always kind of been a challenge. And then this specific scenario happened where we saw sales across the board from this one post, and it was kind of like the aha moment for the whole team of like, oh, this like brand awareness influencer as a brand awareness play is really successful. So I'd say like as part of our top of funnel budget, influencer is probably the largest piece of it.
Makes total sense. As we talk about the top of funnel, I think top of funnel especially was always quite safeguarded by creative teams, brand teams, the arbiters of brand. And traditional CPG, electronics, fashion, and beauty, these categories that we all play in on this panel. How has the dynamic of your team structure evolved over the last 5 years? For background, for those on the call, all of these brands were founded within the same kind of graduating period. They all would have been in high school at the same time. So between 2014, 2018, 19, everybody on the call was beginning. And I imagine that now, sitting in 2024, your teams have evolved, the ways they work have evolved because of influencer and UGC programs directly, especially when we think about top of funnel and awareness. Does anybody have any thoughts on how those dynamics have changed before I kick it off to someone?
I mean, yeah, I can speak to that. I would say our team, we started off very lean, obviously, because we were bootstrapping. But at a certain point, we had a little bit of a bigger team where there were specific roles, like, a web manager. Like our marketing team was like, 9 or 10 people, basically, the marketing team itself. But now with, flash forward 6 years, with all of the kind of tools that we have at our fingertips, Current, and we use like Grin, and there's LTK, and all of these. We use Home from College as well, which is like an easy way to get college creators to make content for you. And I think just the sheer amount of like volume we're all having to put out, and just how things are changing and ever evolving. Now, I would say our team is a lot leaner, and we use a lot more agencies and tools. And so, when you look at everyone that touches the business, there's probably a lot of people that touch the business, but there's a lot of like contractors, part-time people, and agencies, and all these tools that I mentioned that we use to, really punch above our weight. So that's kind of how things have shifted on our end, is really just like a lean full-time team, but probably more people touching the business in general.
Yeah, I would say, Natalie, like when I go to your guys' website, you guys have a very clear brand, like your branding and like your messaging is like really tight and clear. So you've done a really good job in like creating a brand ethos around the product.
Thank you. That's so nice. We try.
Yeah, I think what Natalie said really resonates. I mean, we used to spend a lot more creating a lot of content in-house, and then really pulled back and said, like, are we actually using the content that we're creating in-house, or are we actually using the content that our creators are creating for us, and which is really moving the business? And so, we still create a lot of content in-house, and we'll kind of go head to head in terms of like, is our content that our partners are creating, which is performing better? And we've gotten to the point where, we do have some really solid like in-house creative that can work as well, but we really had to rethink how much we were creating in-house versus how we were spending that with our partners to create for us, and then what types of content we were creating in-house to make sure that they were, as effective as this referral marketing, where someone, who is trusted to their community is referring your product. And I think, as Aaron talked about earlier, I think we both have a product that people don't really think about day to day. People don't think about air. Women do not want to think about the bras and underwear that they're wearing. And it's just like not fun to shop for. And so you kind of need someone to like bring this to the forefront of your mind of like, hey, this thing you have isn't working. How can you make it better? And so I think that's where this referral marketing has done really well. And it creates a higher bar for how do we create content internally that works as well as a lot of this referral content.
That's actually something I was thinking about, BJ, like, we're probably this, I don't know, like transitional generation, right? We all started to BJ's point around the same time. And like old school branding was like very protective and like, hey, we have to own this thing from start to finish. And we have to have the same exact font and the same exact, talking points. And we are of this generation, I think, that kind of like grew up with influencer marketing. And so we're probably like on the edge of like being a little bit more comfortable with it. And I would imagine the next generation of it's not even gonna think twice, right? It's just gonna be like UGC, everything, everywhere. So I think we're like a unique, cohort of companies here.
I think that's so interesting.
Absolutely.
And I was just thinking about that too, what Jenna was saying, because it's like when we launched, a beautiful photo shoot, years ago would have performed the best by far. And nowadays it's like you post that and like it does not perform. It's just kind of like a waste. It's like our money is better spent like through a lot of creators and kind of just like letting them run with it than a beautiful like film photo shoot in our studio, and that bums me out. Well, both are great, creators and photo shoots, but I just feel like the perfect creative doesn't perform as well for us anyway.
We're seeing a little bit, if I can jump in just for Molekule.
Please, Erin.
That we have a really interesting mix across the board. So we have an in-house creative team. We work with contractors. Of course, we have our UGC, and we're working across, D2C, B2B, B2B2C, retail, all of the things. So I think what's been really beautiful for Molekule is there is a time and a place for those beautiful brand shoots for us. They work really well in certain channels. And then also there's absolutely a place for all of our UGC. What's been really fun is to find ways to use our influencer and our UGC content in other channels and kind of trialing that to see, okay, will this land in a more traditional media space? Will this land in our ads? But we're also still seeing that our ads do well with just the, beautiful brand shoots that we have put on. So I'm relatively new to Molekule as well. So it's been really fun to just see this ecosystem of brand and growth and communications work together to really serve each piece of our channel marketing. And yeah, that's where we're sitting. So I feel like we're a little bit this unicorn of the traditional really beautiful stuff is working for us, but we're also seeing such an increase in UGC going well, and stepping into, okay, how do we tap into our customers and not just influencers and people that found us on their own and really have seen, okay, no, air quality is something I really care about and I want to have a Molekule. So how can we tap into that customer base to also speak more about our brand, to give that authenticity? So
I think couldn't be better said, that there is this still plug play approach to how we create content ourselves. And sometimes it works in platform, sometimes it doesn't. But it is so interesting to see how it sets the tone for the creators that are all creating on our behalf. And whether we see kind of head to head, as Jenny mentioned, or, have stepped back, as Natalie talks about, we do set the tone for how people speak about our brand in those highly produced, very well considered, same talking points, same fonts. And then we kind of let them rip, which is exciting. How has that changed for anybody's brand here that can speak to it? The way that we approach organic social, which is really the kind of culmination of how we show up, where it's planned, it's thought out, it's considered, but now there's a lot more content that can help tell the story and kind of bring it all together. Has the way that creators are creating impacted the way that your teams are creating for own channels?
I will say, it's something that we've been a little bit schizophrenic with. If you look at us over just over the course of the last 3 to 5 years, probably of trying to figure it out on the go. I think we've settled on to Natalie's point, this beautiful photo shoot that you spend all this money on and it looks great. It's just not engaging or interesting. And so from owned organic social, we've pulled away from that a little bit. And now it's a mix of UGC or just relatable content that even if we produce it in-house, it doesn't have that polished look to it. But we think of it through okay, we're less focused on follower count these days, and we're not trying to necessarily grow it all the time. It's more of hey, this is kind of our billboard that people can always go to and see who we are really at a glance, right? Not everyone's going to our website to learn that. And so I think it's more of just trying to get out who we are, what we're trying to make in a quick snapshot decision, and make sure that our page is always representing that in a way that we feel good about.
Yeah, one thing we've implemented recently, a couple of months ago. I mean, we used to do them here and there, but definitely part of our strategy is doing collab reels with creators. So we're doing 2, which sometimes feels like a lot, but 2 collab reels a week. And it's like a way to kind of really like test creative point of views and like see what works. So right now that's performing well for us. And I think the creators also like it because then they get exposure on their channels. So that's one thing we've implemented recently.
Jenna, I know that in this space, not to put you on the spot, but there have been a lot of creators that have grown as Harper Wilde has kind of given some light to them as well. Exactly how Natalie mentioned these creator reels. Any insights you can share on kind of how those relationships have evolved or impacted the dynamics of the commercial side of kind of working with these folks that, maybe they had a few thousand followers, they made some great content, and because there was so much paid energy behind them, their footprint looks very different now.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that a bit when you asked the earlier question of like how have working with creators, how has it changed the business? And we've talked a lot about how do you make it mutually beneficial. And there have been folks, putting less on the organic side, but more on the paid side, and we partner with folks and spark those ads or put money behind those creator created assets. We've seen so much success on our side. And then as BJ was alluding to, the creators have seen so much success as well. So we've grown their following from, a couple thousand to hundreds of thousands or more, just because of how much it's working on both sides. And so I think those are really, really cool, partnerships where it's just, it works. It works for us to continue putting money behind it, which is benefiting our business, but it also benefits them and it benefits their following. So when we find those, I think the most challenging thing is like, how do we find those? And that's where we really have to, we talked about breadth a little bit, we have to, take a lot of shots on goal to kind of find the ones that are going to work and then really lean into those. And when we do, it can be really beneficial for our creator partners and for us, which is really exciting.
That's actually like an incredible case study that I always try to make that case. I don't have a bunch of data to back it up but I mean, that's be a really good deck for you guys to put together to pitch to creators like, hey, look how we've helped this person grow. Because it is a mutually beneficial, right? It is that 1 + 1 = 3. And if you get stuck talking to an agent or a talent manager, like they're just gonna try to upcharge you almost, right? To get that whitelisting capabilities or or to get the license usage rights or whatever. But I do think like there are many times, especially when it's a high integrity brand, it's like, hey, I'm not asking you to, say some crazy thing about a pill that's, but like you make really high quality bone broth, you make really amazing intimate wear, you make a air purifier. These are all, you make high quality, beautiful weights. These are all like high integrity products. Like no one has to sell their soul to sell. So like the influencers should see the value there. But yeah, I mean, if you that's really cool to hear that you have helped influencers grow through your marketing. That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know how many founders are on the call, but I think Nick, that's a really great point. Is like we're kind of talking about down the line how to work with creators, but I think that the first step is you have to have a great product, and that has made all of our conversations so much easier. Even if someone's like, "Oh, I don't know, do I need this?" We send them the product done. Like that's it. And so I think in terms of like how do you actually start that partnership, it has to come back to it's got to be really easy for folks to talk about authentically. And I think that has helped us, get partnerships for folks that, maybe we're outside of our range or batting outside our league, but they just love the product. And that has really helped at the end of the day.
Pivoting a little more to some of the more commercial aspects of these programs, when you go to plot this out and you say, hey, I'm looking at my entire marketing mix, I want to kind of punch above my weight class in awareness. Influencer programs can encompass all 3 stages of the traditional marketing funnel: awareness, consideration, and conversion quite easily. Does anyone on this call kind of plan these campaigns that way? Do they let campaigns shake out the way they shake out? What works, we lean into more. How do you think about balancing the three kind of stages of a traditional marketing mix, which can all be served by creator and UGC campaigns? going to pick on you, Natalie, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So for creator campaign, I think for us, like our whole strategy in the business in general is like we're always testing theories and then investing deeper in them. And so basically for us, for creators, like we, our marketing agency or in-house will come up with ideas or campaigns and see what works. And then we go deeper in whatever works. So if it's like, okay, this time we gifted 100 people and we did an event for a launch and we made, partnered with 4 other brands to make that come to life. That worked. Maybe next time we, rinse and repeat, or we say, okay, let's double the amount of creators. Like we kind of like learn along the way. And I think another thing that is true is that right now things are just always changing and evolving and moving so quickly that what worked today is not necessarily going to work tomorrow. So I think you're just always having to innovate there and just come up with new ideas. For us right now, something that we're testing into, which I mentioned earlier, is working with college creators to get like 30 or sometimes like 40 assets on TikTok a month. And this we just started that, but it's working. So we probably double down on that. But then maybe that won't work in a few months. So you're just kind of always like evolving essentially.
Yeah, I would say it was a bit easier, a little out of practice just as we become more retail focused. I feel like we that intent part. On the influencer side, I kind of take it for granted in that the audiences are targeted based on the influencers that we're working with, right? So like we have some data that we could look at through some of these platforms that tells you, male, female demographic split, age split, US, we're focused on US based because we're only available in the US. So I'm assuming that like the intent piece is like, okay, as long as we're talking to this, through this influencer, we're going to reach this audience. And then, we do have that bottom of funnel measuring tool to see like, okay, is there a signal from coupon code conversions or, swipe up links or, purchases that can signal that like, okay, at least some percentage of this is converting online. We can assume that a much greater percentage is going to convert in store. And so we kind of have like our evergreen always on campaigns that we're always feeding into. And that would be kind of like we want to be everywhere all at once in the cooking space. And we want our carton shown. And like we'll build campaigns around that to get cheaper pricing where it's like, okay, you don't even have to hit on talking points. You just say the words bone broth, you show our carton, we'll pay you we'll just pay you every single month you do that X number of times. And that's kind of an awareness play. And then we'll kind of lean in to more scripted, more focused. Like I really want to go after females who are trying to get protein into their diet. All right, that is a little bit more of a focused campaign. We'll kind of like think through the campaign process a little bit more, the talking points. We'll be more selective on who we work with because it's going to be in a paid capacity versus kind of like a higher rate paid capacity. So that's kind of how we're looking at it. It was a lot easier when we were just doing everything on DTC and you could say, oh, we got this many clicks, we got impressions, clicks, conversions. You have all 3 pieces of the funnel right there that are easily measurable. But it's been a little more challenging, I guess, since we get into retail.
It's interesting that you said we sometimes forget about conversion or intent. I'm sorry, that kind of consideration, intent, middle stage, and influencer programs often collapse to awareness, right? If this is the first time we're reaching and we're giving you the reason to believe because you already believe this person that is reaching you, you already follow them. You're really serving 2 stages of the funnel with a single touch, which I imagine is why we all see so much success in creator-led content. When you get to the conversion part, and Nick, you teed this up pretty well, and I want to leverage the fact that Nicolo is on the call as well. How do you think about kind of measurement and effectiveness for your own? There is no one science, especially in these programs. And for background of those on the call, that we have every stage of omnichannel represented on this call. I'm going to run through it to spare everybody from having to introduce their stage, if you don't mind. Starting with Bala, the programs span national, mass, and endemic and niche. Harper Wilde was available exclusively at Nordstrom for quite some time. Kettle Fire, obviously, grocery, omni grocery, and mass retailers. and Molekule is in the pre-launch stage of an omni-channel program that will serve B2B. So you really, and B2B2C. So you have everybody here. This is like the wild, wild west of measurement and effectiveness, all coming from very different points of view. But I'm going to kick it to you first, Nicolo, if you don't mind, just focusing on omni-channel day in and day out.
Yeah, so with like creators and influencers, we kind of experiment a lot right now. There's different way you can kind of measure success, specifically like if you are trying to move product in stores. We started by leveraging, for example, Instacart. We spend a lot of money on Instacart, and so we can leverage like creators with like specific UTM and specific Instacart landing pages to track how many actually people visit the link and then make a transaction. Again, I'm not expecting, because we shift a lot toward like brand awareness from an influencer standpoint. We don't expect as many, as much sales as before on DTC, because also on DTC average order value is much higher, so much easier to kind of break even. But like Nick said before, we kind of expect some sort of signal there, which is like intent of people interested into buying this product or about that audience. So option number one is kind of leveraging Instacart landing pages with UTM to kind of track conversions. Then we also, our VP of marketing kind of built a tool internally where basically we can run promo in store. So an influencer, for example, post about hey, we're running like a BOGO. If you make a purchase and then send a picture of your receipt, we're gonna maybe refund you like, one of the product. So we build this tool internally in order to kind of collect user data and then allow to kind of influencer to track some performance. Outside of that, I would say those two are the two main one, and then you can leverage Amazon as well. I don't know if here anyone is kind of selling on Amazon, but Amazon kind of allow you to have attribution link where you also get 20% back when someone make a conversion through that link. And that's a great way. We did that during Prime Day with like specifically like smaller micro influencer like ambassadors. We ran those promo for Prime Day and measure success there to understand if that was like an interesting audience we want to tap into, next year or the next Prime Day as well. So as you scale and as you become like more omni-channel, it's really tough to kind of measure success from that point of view. But another interesting metric we are leveraging is like brand awareness from like branded search volume. And when, big like influencer kind of talk about us on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, we can see a spike on Google Trend, but also Amazon branded search volume really skyrocketed. So that's really like a KPI and measure of success that we leverage from an omni-channel standpoint.
Anybody else kind of have thoughts on measurement and success, campaign effectiveness in this world of omnichannel or pure play D2C, that your thinking's either evolved or stand out, or what you've learned as these programs have grown?
I would say another place where we see that top of funnel, bottom funnel, and forget the middle part is podcasts is another like space where we see a lot of like, okay, how did it do from an impression standpoint, and then how many conversions? And for us, that's like another area, real tangentially related to influencer, where we're looking, and would either continue working with them as a long-term partner if we see a good signal, or kind of cut the partnership a little bit shorter if we don't see much purchase behavior there.
Awesome.
I did see a question in the Q&A. I don't know if we do those at the end or whatever, but
yeah, I think that we'll save a couple minutes at the end for Q&A. So anyone who's listening, please feel free to throw that in there. We are rounding out now, and I want to kind of throw something out to the panel as a quick fire. And that quick fire is kind of biggest drivers and drainers, biggest wins and misses. I'd love to hear everyone. I know, Aaron, your tenure at Molekule has been short, so feel free to kind of share from your expertise across other brands. But we'll go round robin from my screen, and you happen to be first, friend. But would love to hear just things that have surprised you, kind of as upside and as just an opportunity to learn and pivot in your work. Can I put you on the spot first, Erin?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go for it. I'll start with something that we're learning. We have a relatively high consideration product. It is not common for somebody to see Molekule and be like, add to cart, I'm doing that. Because it's an investment. It absolutely is. So I think that has shifted the team's mindset and mine specifically too on how do we approach influencer, and at what rate does it make sense to scale our influencer program? Does it matter how many influencers we have, or do we want to get really quality influencers that we continue to work with over time so that they're continuing to hit their audience talking about Molekule over and over again? Because we know it takes more time for our customers to think about adding Molekule to their life. So that has been a really key learning for me over the course of my, as you said, short tenure at Molekule. But it's really exciting because we're shifting kind of the way that we approach, and I'm excited to see how that will change the outcome as far as conversion rate goes for us, because a lot of what our focus is right now with influencer is brand awareness and engagement. Engagement is huge, and because how do you get people to care about the air that they breathe unless they have a really big reason to care about the air that they breathe, right? So that has lent its way to some really neat, I talked about this at the top and I'll keep talking about it ad nauseum for the course of the rest of my life probably, but people being able to tell this story of how air quality actually does affect them personally. And that resonates with other people. We are all connected in certain ways, probably more than we recognize. So that story is really important alongside the science. So that's the really exciting side of things, is that we have a cool story to tell about something that you don't think about in your day-to-day unless you need to. So.
Great. How about Jenna? And on your journey, what has been the big surprise and maybe the big surprise we really thought this was going to work, and we're gonna pivot.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that has been really cool in terms of our creator influencer journey, I'll tell the story of one in particular. I can't remember, BJ, if this was while you were working with us, but one day we just saw a massive pop in sales and we're like, what's going on? And it turns out someone had posted like 10 minutes into a 30-minute video about Harper Wilde and how much she loved the products and all the bras and all this stuff. And so, that was unpaid. She just was saying, how much she loved the product. And so we went to her and we said, hey, can we use this? Can we work with you? We, deepened that relationship and continue to work with her. We made a capsule product that was, specific to her with a quote on it. And long story short, after, time when we raised our next round of funding, we went to her and asked if she wanted to be an investor, and she invested in the company. So I think there's kind of like no shortage of ways you can like really, really deepen your relationship with creators. And I think that was a really cool one of like, how do we fully align incentives in every way, shape, and form? And I think folks often, want to figure out how to work with brands. I saw a question on that, and like, not to say like, oh, do work for free, but like this person loved the product. She posted about it and that caught our attention. And that's the easiest way to show like, oh, I can move product. My community loves what you're making. And we reached out to her as soon as we figured out where it was coming from, and figured out how to, make sure we could deepen that relationship.
Yeah. That was pre my time at Harper Wilde. For those on the call, I worked
Who was it?
very closely with Jenna.
I'm scrolling the Instagram looking for it.
It was a different one. No, it was early. It's not where I was thinking, where I thought you were going with this story. There have been some really fortuitous. People love Harper Wilde post organically, and we've been able to deepen those relationships. I thought you were going another way.
You can share it if there's another one, BJ.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was thinking Elise Myers.
Great one.
Yeah, like not only loved a product, but loved a product that was not necessarily on the kind of roadmap for what we were focused on. Just wore a tee that really made a big impact and drove tons of traffic to the site with intent. So it just kind of totally changed what we were focused on from an assortment mix, which I thought was a nice story. Natalie, how about yourself? What were some of your big surprises on this journey?
Lots of surprises, but creative, okay, creator specific, I would say it still surprises me when like, I mean, for us, like we did have some early large creators post and like we got a lot of traction, but these days it's like we never know where it's going to come from creator wise. Like until we see their stats. But I think what surprises me most is like you could have a celebrity post and you think it's gonna blow up and maybe it doesn't, but then you have this random like Texas blogger mom that is like driving like hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales. And I think that is always surprising to me. And we're always talking about it internally. We're like, I can't believe that person, like, let's do more with that person. So I think you can theorize on who's going to perform unless you have obviously their stats in front of you, but that never ceases to amaze me who's actually going to drive sales.
I think building on that, we had, just to drive the point home, at one point we had Khloe Kardashian and Kourtney Kardashian both posted for free with a direct swipe up link to our site, and we didn't see it move the needle. And it was a great post, like, you know, everything. And thankfully it was, you know, it was unpaid, but I think that's something where if that came our way, we would assume that there's like a pretty high number that, you know, we might have wanted to pay to justify that. And so to Natalie's point, like you really just don't know. And so for us, we tend to be a little risk averse, starting smaller and then growing, just because you have no idea what's going to work for you.
It's quite illustrative of Natalie's point. Whereas I think that mom in Texas being hugely productive for Harper Wilde is true as well, as a surprise. How about our friends in bone broth world? What have been your kind of big unlock surprises or even drainers?
I think I have the same that Nick has. So
Well,
Nick, you can already go ahead.
No, I'll go with the kind of, I think there's a lot of tools out there that make the influencer side easier. You know, we leverage some virtual assistants that help with just like some like templatized work and just systems and processes. We really try to build, as you know, Nico's a very process oriented guy. I'm a little bit less so, but like it's a lot of hand-to-hand combat. It's a lot of hard work. There aren't that many shortcuts in influencer marketing, and that I think is something that you don't find that many brands that really crush it because they don't give it the time it deserves. They will test it and have the wrong expectations, so they'll get out of it, or they won't invest enough manpower into it. And so I think, you know, and it's a kind of a double-edged sword. You're working with humans, right? And so like there's a lot of messiness that goes with it and unreliability. And so like just getting the reps in and learning like how to build a campaign, how to not, you know, I think something that was very humbling for me is like you have an idea that you think is going to crush and you put together the talking points in the script, and then, you know, Khloe Kardashian posts and it doesn't work, but then some random person does like organically, and then just the audience and the consumers can see through that. They're really, really good at seeing through that. And I think it's something that kind of opened my eyes to just like a true, authentic, organic post is just, it's hard to replicate and it's really hard to like manufacture that. And so kind of like putting yourself in as many positions as possible, just like to let that magic happen, and doing what you can to kind of steer it towards that is kind of all you can do sometimes. And then just back to like, it's just a lot of reps and grinding and outreach and sample sending and people not getting back to you. And so I think just like sticking with it is something that we've had to do. And we've just built a larger team with more resources. And so now we have a pretty good system going, but it's a lot of hard work.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to kind of close out the formal part of the panel. I just wanted to thank you guys and reiterate a couple of things that stood out to me.
BJ, can I ask one question to the panel? Actually, sorry,
Please.
before. So, yeah, sorry.
Please.
So we are overly indexed probably on Instagram. It's where we started. You know, we used to do a lot of like, you know, Meta, Facebook, and Instagram, which is a really natural way. So like we're probably 85% Instagram, 15 TikTok. I'd be curious, just like from your guys' perspective, what's your percentage mix look like right now from TikTok to Instagram?
I would say same.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, go.
Sorry, just are you asking purely influencer?
Yeah, on the influencer side of things, like how much time and resources do you put towards Instagram versus TikTok?
Oh, it's probably 90-10 at this point. Yeah.
Okay.
90% being Instagram.
90 Instagram. Okay.
Yeah, we kind of flip-flopped a little bit. It was like really everything in Meta, and then we found early success in TikTok and like quickly shifted and poured a lot in there, and then started to see the last 6+ months Meta start to be move the needle more for us, and we've now shifted back.
At one point in Harper Wilde's journey, I believe that TikTok did surpass both spend and investment. It was short-lived, but there was a period that it totally flipped.
Interesting, yeah.
And that volatility can be tough, but for sure. But you got to be like nimble and quick.
Yeah, it's a little point of like insecurity on my end around like I should know the TikTok space a little bit better, but I think we've just been hesitant to fully jump in for that volatility reason, and I just feel like there's still so much white space for us on the Instagram side. And it's the devil we know, I guess. But anyway, sorry, not to detract, BJ. I was just curious.
No, that's a great question. One thing that an influencer manager that I was working with recommended from the beginning is always to include the secondary platform. Most influencers have built their following on one versus the other. So it's not going to change the cost dynamics, but at least you'll have content should that dynamic ever flip. So
yeah,
very smart thing to 1,000 followers on a secondary platform. You built your following on TikTok or Instagram. Can we negotiate rights for both? Just in case you have to be quick and nimble. Always something smart that I've held with me and taken. A couple kind of trends throughout our conversation that I heard is just there is a dynamic where everyone can be an influencer. It is not influencer with a capital I, or capital K. To Jenna's Kardashian point, even brands can be influencers. Consistency and authenticity, really increasing frequency with players so it doesn't feel like this is a one-off, but they can build trust within their communities, creating mutually beneficial relationships. These are not transactional, one and done programs. These are nurtured and loved and extensions of a brand. Taking a lot of shots on goal in to the ones that work. These questions, but before, I just want to thank you guys for taking your time to join us on this. It is such a joy to be with so many really bright marketers and founders, and I'm sure that everyone on the call has gotten a lot out of it. I certainly have, and geek out on everything D2C. The first question coming from the panel is, have you seen an uptick in influencers approaching your brand, and how do they get your attention if so? Anyone seen an uptick or have any standout ways?
I think Jenna hit on this, where it's like if you create if you love the brand, like I would just say like create a piece of content, and I don't know, you could even just follow up with the brand after it's posted. Hey, I love your brand. I'm not sure if you saw this, but I'd love to talk. I think that's the best way. It shows a little bit of like, hey, I'm willing to, here's what I can do. And I think it's just like, it's one of those things that, like, the bigger you get as a brand, the easier this gets, and the more outreach, the more inbound stuff you get. I would say though, to be honest, like, not 90% of paid stuff that we do is outbound. But maybe I'm unique in that. Yeah.
Anybody else dissent from that, or is their program largely casted with outbound?
Ours is a lot of inbound and kind of has been for the most part. And I would say we've always seen a steady inflow of inbound, and it is, you can't, unless you have a huge team, you can't give everyone the attention. And so I think what Jenna talked about earlier, like not saying create content for free or anything like that, but like, even if you email over like ideas or a mood board, like give us, hey, I actually am going to do your brand justice. And whether that's serving it creatively or with sales, I think just like something like that can make you stand out for sure, and hit them many times, like not, hello at email and the DMs, maybe DM the founder. I mean, that's a lot for sure, but anything, and maybe you'll get noticed basically.
Amazing. We have 1 minute left. I'm going to take it right to the wire. Have there been any trends in niche and small influencers that you have noticed in performance, kind of smaller footprint, more micro influencers of late?
This is a bad analogy. I was like, you can kind of hunt with like a sniper rifle or the grenade launcher, and like that's kind of like my performance versus awareness thing, right? And I think the smaller the influencer, the more like niche their audience is, and so they might move the needle relative to their cost, right? So they might have a really good ROI, but they're probably relatively cheap, and it's likely not scalable. And now you're having the conversation. So we've kind of shifted away to like the 90-10 rule of like your top 10% of influencers are going to drive 90% of your results. So it's like that. It's an extreme version of that 80-20 rule. So we look at like from an impressions brand awareness side, 100%. If you want a bunch of impressions, go big. Sorry, I know I wish I got here, but that's yeah.
No, we are running tight on time. I think the best use is to take these questions and maybe Trent, you can answer them in writing on LinkedIn. So follow Trenton on LinkedIn for the answers to these. We'll get thoughts from the panelists offline. Thank you, everybody. And we're only 1 minute over, which is a modern miracle. So thank you, guys.
Thank you,
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Bye.